Happy Tuesday, everybody. Today is September 28th, 2021, and we are 3 days out from opening day of deer season, and today's conversation is all about killing bucks on opening day. All right, welcome back to the Fall Podcast, and today is a big episode, and the reason why is because we're 3 days out from the opener of 2021 deer season. That's right, October 1st is this Friday for Michigan and a lot of other states as well, and I couldn't be more pumped, and I think it honestly just really hit me this weekend because a lot of you guys know that listen to this frequently. I am building my own house. I've been building it since May, and that has taken up all my time. And honestly, usually I am living, breathing whitetails every day, it feels like, but it's kind of taken a back burner, and I've been really busy. And now, like this weekend, I was sitting back and I was like, holy shit, it's in 3 days. Like, I can't believe this. So I had this idea. On the other line is my good buddy, Tyler Bentley. You guys have heard a lot from him lately. He's been on a couple episodes, but, to get everybody, thinking about opening day, I wanted to get into a story. I was thinking about an idea to do a podcast this week. I wanted to get into a story about the only buck that I've ever killed on October 1st, and it happened in 2016. I haven't really gone in depth with this story. I think I've talked about bits and pieces of this buck in other podcasts, but I was talking to Tyler about it, and he's like, dude, let me come on and help you co-host this because I got some questions about this. He really doesn't even know this story, but this is my best bow buck from Michigan. If anybody's wondering what the score is, he scored 118 inches as a 7-point. He broke his 8th point off, about a week or two right before I killed him. I had pictures of this deer all through summer, filmed them and everything, and the story is pretty cool. So without further ado, Tyler is on the other line. Can you hear me, man? Nothing much. So today, you and I have talked a little bit, and you're going to kind of take over the reins a little bit, and you have a list of questions, but you have not told me these questions or, said anything to me about them. So I'm interested to get into this. And I think you were taken a little back when you said, I don't think I've ever heard this story because I've never told you or you've never heard it on a podcast. Is that kind of right?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. I never knew that you killed a deer opening day. What you said, it was 2016?
16, yep.
That's awesome, man. I'm kind of scratching my head a little bit coming into deer seasons, opening up Friday, staring at the weather. And when you said you killed one opening day, I was like, whoa, I've never heard this story. So I'm excited to hear from you, like how it went down and, that type of stuff. So
yeah, and it's pretty cool how it went down. And honestly, this deer meant a ton to me just because I've talked about it before on some of these podcasts about how I feel like I get so emotionally attached to deer around here in Michigan because I see them all summer or I've hunted them year in and year out. And like when that opportunity comes, I feel like it's like amplified the nerves, and I feel like I just get jacked up. And I've talked to, I think, Kurt Geyer honestly on a podcast about how I can go out to other states and I've killed way bigger deer with a bow, and I get amped up, but not as much as I do here. And it's like the only thing I can think of is it's just that, like, you get emotionally attached to a deer or a situation, and it's like, I got to make it happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's probably that. And obviously we live in Michigan, so those encounters and those opportunities are so slim. So like when it happens here, it just seems to be so much more sentimental because it just happens, not as often here. You go out west, you go to Missouri, Iowa, anywhere in the Midwest, even Ohio, you're kind of expecting to have those opportunities. So yeah, it's almost like the high isn't as high. The dopamine drop isn't the same. Like when you're in Michigan and a shooter buck walks out, I don't care if he's 100 inches, you're just like, holy shit, you get jacked.
It's crazy because, you and I do a lot of out-of-state hunting, and when we're out of state, we don't even pick our bow up for deer like that. You know what I mean? And it's not like, oh, big heart throbbing. You know what I mean? Right. But here, I'm not gonna lie to you, 105-inch buck. Like last year, I was sitting on the farm that I killed this deer on that we're gonna get into. On October 2nd night, I had a buck come out. I looked and I see him in the. I was sitting in an oak flat and I see him come up over the hill and I'm like, oh shit, that's a good buck. And as he got closer, he got a little smaller and a little smaller, but still I was excited. He was, probably touch 90 inches or so. And I'm like, wow, like normally if I was anywhere else, I'd be like, it's just another deer, know?
Right. Yeah, you might whisper to the camera guy, "Hey, little buck," not even think nothing. It's just funny,
Exactly. Yep. Well,
That's cool.
like I said, today I want to get into this story. And honestly, it started off as an idea of just like getting guys amped up for opening day, but there's as I thought about it, there's a lot more that went into this story as far as little different or little storylines that were different as far as like the weather, how it was playing out through that day. One of my neighbors kind of gets involved in this story, which was kind of neat. So we'll get into that as well. How the deer approached the stand, where my stand was located. I shot the deer directly downwind of me. So there's some situations in here that I think will be really cool, and I think a lot of people will take something from it and maybe be able to implement it here in 3 days.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, for sure,
So,
man. That's kind of like me. I had one of my shooter bucks for this year just show up on my farm the other day, and it's got me scratching my head. We're so close to season. Obviously, I want to actively hunt this deer, and then hearing that you're successful on opening day, I want to know why you hunted, where you hunted, and why were you sitting in that specific spot. You know what I mean? Because I'm guessing that you either had pictures or you had data, something or some reason put you in that spot. So I want to know exactly why you were sitting where you were.
for sure. And so before we get into that, I do want to like kick the story off from that summer. So the summer of 2016, we got a 65-acre hayfield at my family farm here in Michigan, and it's a great field to go up in the summer and watch deer eat on the alfalfa. There would be 100 deer in this field. Well, there was two particular bucks that were really sticking out to us. Like when I say us, me and the other guys that hunt the property. There was a tall, tight 8-pointer, the one that I shot. He's like 16 inches wide, but he's real tall. Like his G2s are, almost 10 inches or so. And I can't remember exactly what they were, but he was real tight and real tall. The other one was like a tit 9 that was more like 18 inches wide and, didn't have great tine length, probably 7-inch tines, but we figured they'd both tip the scale probably around 115 to 125 inches, somewhere in there.
Solid Michigan bucks.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And those were the two top 10% of bucks that were out there that year. Those were going to be the two we were really gunning for. And, I was filming these deer. I have footage of both of these deer in velvet. And to kind of break down the farm, it's 218 acres and it's longer than it is wide. And on the south end of our property is where the hayfield is, and it's where a main road is. Well, as the summer went on, this deer started showing up on the north end of the property. So I'm going to guess, I'm just going to throw a number out there. I'm going to say well over 1,000 yards away from where he was summering, I started getting pictures of this deer in like August, okay? And I'm talking frequent, like every day on a pattern in daylight, no dark pictures. So I'm like, okay, I found this deer's, like where he transitioned. I found out where he's living. And honestly, it happened by happenstance. Like I had a camera. Trail cams did play a big role in this. So if you guys are looking for a trail cam, go to ExodusOutdoorGear.com. Check out everything Exodus has to offer. You can get their Render, like I've said before, is my favorite because I'm big into cell cams now, or the Trek or the Lift 2. They're all great cameras. Go check them out. They offer a 5-year warranty, and their cameras are built to last. So go check out Exodus at ExodusOutdoorGear.com. In our cedar swamp on the edge of a pond, and it was like a huge pinch point, and it's where like hardwoods meets the swamp, and it's like where oak trees meet cedars. And I put a camera right there, and all of a sudden, both of these deer, the tit 9-pointer and the buck that I killed, every day by with each other, they're coming through here, and I'm like, wow, okay. So I set up a stand right there, and I'm like, this is where I'm gonna hunt them. Opening day, I'm gonna jump in here. I let my camera marinate the whole month of September. I'm like, I'm not gonna check it. None of them. I'm like, I'm just gonna stay out. I'm gonna take my chances. This is kind of where I messed up in a way. This is where I've kind of transitioned a little bit to something a little different than when I did then. I was like, I need to stay out of here, just take my chance. But I was still a little green when it comes to, my whole train of thought was like, I want to stay out and just they'll stay there. But really, as I get farther into it, I'm like, okay, they're going to transition again. Like the month of September, they're going to keep moving.
They're probably going to have another switch there. You said you hung that stand in September, or when did you hang the stand?
I hung it right before September 1st, like end of August.
Okay,
yep.
Cool.
Yep. And it was right in this pinch, and I'm like, the deer have to come through here because there's no other way around me. And I'm like, I'm going to sit here opening morning. I really felt like it was way in the thick stuff. I really felt like I could get around the deer. I could get in the stand and just kind of let them come back and kill them as they come to bed. Didn't really know where they were bedding, but I felt like I knew where they were. I was probably 200 yards from like where I thought they were bedding. So I felt like I had a good opportunity with what the wind was that day. It was a northeast wind. I felt like the deer were going to be cutting the wind coming from my west, going east into their bed. I thought I'm perfect. I felt like the deer would have the wind coming into their bed, and I would have basically a just off wind. I didn't know that at the time, but like now looking back, I was like, okay, that was a perfect scenario. He just didn't show up that morning.
So you got this. So you got the stand hung the last week or last week into August, and you're going in October 1st to try to kill this deer.
Yep.
So you actually went in the morning on October 1st.
And I did. And the reason being is because it was raining. It rained all that night, and I'm like, I'm going to get in deep, and I'm going to get in the rain. And it was supposed to stop raining like mid-morning. And remind you, I'm going in blind, like just going off like my August like trail cam stuff.
Right.
Just hoping and praying. And like I said, I'm not going to lie to you, like I didn't really know a ton about I knew the deer shifted in September, but it was one of those things that was like, man, these guys are so regular. I think they're just going to, if I keep the pressure off, I feel like they're just going to stay here. That was my whole thought process.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. You have, I've been to your family farm turkey hunting with you a couple times, and you have a road system through that whole property.
Yep.
So for like by the road, which would be the south side, is all the field. So you're actually pulling in the wide open field, going back to the cabin, and then it kind of gets thicker further north you would go, like towards the back. So you're actually walking all the way, like on that trail system, road system, all the way to the back to hunt.
Yes. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
You're good. So you're set up, I'm trying to picture this, and all the way in the back there, and you got your stand hung on which side of the road back there?
So I was on the east side of the road.
East side of the road. Okay, I'm trying to figure where you're at. So you can get in that trail system pretty well too, even in the morning, probably because it's like kind of down.
Yep.
So like if you had to like slip in there, it's actually pretty good access to go hunt back in there.
Yep. And what Tyler means by trail systems, we just got really good, like nice 2 tracks that we've built over the years and keep them groomed for, being able to get a deer out, or even just, getting to your stand. It's nice and quiet to be able to, make a good ascent to wherever you want to hunt.
Right. It's not like you're just hucking across, wide open timber or brush, or, when you're saying that 1,000 yards back, you actually have like a pretty nice access trail to get all the way back there.
Right. And I will say, like Tyler was talking about, our hayfield, it's the worst setup ever. I will say that, because
that's got to be tough.
It is. It's hard to hunt this farm in the mornings because our hayfield is right in the front of the farm, and it's the only entrance to the farm. And our cabin, we have a deer camp there. It's a nice cabin. It's off. Basically, you got to drive right through the hayfield, and as you get to the back of the hayfield, which is closer to the middle of the farm, our cabin sits there. So the only way to really hunt it in the morning is hope that nobody's going to come up in the morning and spend the night at the cabin. And that's what we did. A couple of us guys, we spent the night at the cabin, so it's like you're not coming through the field in the morning and blowing all the deer out,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yep. And we had bow camp that night. So we have a whole bunch of people that kind of come up to the cabin that night. We're playing euchre, playing cards, drinking some beers. And I actually got into a conversation with one of my neighbors. And he's a really good dude. Get along with him really well. He's like, hey, man, they called this deer. I can't remember what they named the deer that I ended up killing. He's like, we got this deer. He's up in the front of the property. He's like, we're getting him on trail cam. That the night before opener, and I'm like, man, did he shift? Did he move? Like, or is he just wandering? And all my pictures were in daylight, and I'll get into the September pictures I was getting of him as well once I get to that point. But I'm like, did he shift? Did he move? And I'm like, no, just stick to the course. Just stick, go to the thick stuff. Go to the point, the pinch point. It's thick down there. I really think he's been there. I think I'm gonna have an opportunity of him there, and that's what I did. And I woke up that morning and it's pouring rain. I'm like, well, I'm going in. I scooted down there, got my stand real quiet. The rain, I mean, it kind of helped me because it was loud. Got in there, sat all morning, and never saw a deer.
Oh, dang.
Never saw a deer. And like my thought process then was like, okay, it's raining. I'm going to go check cards. That was my...
That's a good idea.
Yeah, do you do that as well? Like when it's raining, just kind of slip in and check cards? And
I do for sure. If you want to move a stand, or if there's something you have to do, like check cameras, like on if it's raining or thunderstorming, and you can slip in there and do that. By the time you're back to the truck, it's washing that scent out of there. And it's noise wise, there's so much noise. I mean, you could walk right by a bedded deer, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
for sure.
I do the same thing. It works good.
Yeah, so that's what I did. I'm like, I'm going to go up to the cabin. I had to do some stuff midday, but I'm like, as I pull out, where the neighbor was talking about is in the front of our property, like where he butts up and they're getting pictures of this deer is like closer to where he was summering. I mean, like real close. It's a couple 100 yards. I'm
Okay.
like, man, I got a camera and a stand up there, and I'm like, maybe he's coming through this transition. So to your question that you asked me earlier, why were you sitting there? Why was the stand there? Why do you have the camera there? I'm going to get into that right now. So like on the edge of the destination food, our 65-acre hayfield, where he's been summering all year, there is probably 30 yards of pine trees that were planted back 30, 40 years ago. Now they're grown up. Not like big, like huge, tall pine trees. I'm talking, they're pretty tall, but 15, 20 foot tall. Can't really get a tree stand in them. They're not big enough, but they're all planted in rows. And then after that 30 yards of trees, it turns into rolling hills oak trees. Okay, so it's like there's a hard line. There's a hard transition. And these pine trees, you can't see under them. They're pretty thick. Well, I call it the beehive spot because there's a little trail that goes right to where this, where the pine trees meet the oaks, and there's this little opening. I mean, it'd be a perfect little kill plot. It's not that big, maybe 1/8 of an acre. Well, the reason why it's there is because back in the day when, my relatives, they still own it, but when they had a beekeeper come in there and he puts bees in there, still does it to this day. And there's always bee boxes around there, so we call it the beehive. Everybody just knows where the beehive is. So this deer, we ended up calling him the beehive buck. Well, there was this little opening, and it worked as a transition to where when the deer would come into the destination food, it was like a big bowl. Like it was almost like a bowl was cut out of the alfalfa field, and everything was like up above it. So when deer are in this bowl, you cannot see them unless you're like right on top of them. So the deer love to use it because of the thermals. They loved entering the field right there because of the thermals. So
right.
My thought
and
was...
the cover too. The
Yes.
cover,
Yep.
they can not be spooked, not see the... How far is this off the road roughly?
So, and it's a good question because I was going to say, this is probably 200 yards off the road, off the main road. I mean, it's kind of annoying to sit in the stand because you hear cars constantly. It's not that far off the road, but you would never know it was there. And I just felt like, when I was pre-hanging this stand in the summer, I just felt like this was going to be a great spot. and because it had a couple things going for it. It had hard edge, and it was just kind of a funnel. It was just, if you could get the wind right, it was good. And what I did is I tucked the stand in I think it was a maple tree, it's a big maple, but it was on if you can imagine the transition running east and west, okay, the field being to the west of me, and then the hardwoods being to the east. And then my neighbor, where he was hunting, was even farther east, like 200 yards from my stand. He had a stand on his property. Well, his property is an overgrown Christmas tree farm. Okay, and when I mean overgrown, when you try to walk in these trees, you cannot walk in them. They are so thick. The deer and the rabbits and the wildlife just love it.
I love it. Yeah.
Yes, it is thicker than hair on a dog's back. I mean, it like deer bed in it for sure. So knowing that there's bedding within 150 to 200 yards from me, and me being the destination food, that was another factor going into like why the stand should be there.
Okay.
Back to like the tree that I hung, and the reason why I hung it on the north side of the funnel, the east-west funnel, because I had a hill behind me, and I didn't feel like any deer were going to make it around behind me. So all my movement I felt was going to be like right in front of me.
Like to the north, essentially.
It would have been to the south. It would have been.
So you're facing, I see, you're opposite way.
My stand is actually facing northwest.
Okay.
But like the movement would be back off my like back left shoulder right by me because I'm a righty. It would have been like over the shoulder, perfect shot, if that makes sense.
I got you. So that morning, you got out of the stand, didn't see no deer. It's raining. You're going to check cameras. That's one of the spots you went to go check a camera at?
Yes. So that camera, so there is a trail, a 2-track trail that is right on the edge of the field and the pine trees. So I could literally pull my pickup right up, walk about 10 steps into the pines and pull the cart and get out.
Okay.
And I was just going to pull it on the way out. So that's kind of where I was at with it.
And vehicles aren't really going to spook them because you're only a couple hundred yards from the road in the first place.
Yep. So that was another train of thought too. And this gets farmed a lot, so there's a lot of vehicles that, I shouldn't say a lot, but farm vehicles and everything. And I felt like the deer weren't going to be right up tight to the field. I felt like they were going to be off in that thick stuff on the neighbors.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, having that Christmas tree farm and all those pines and stuff, you're kind of already assuming like they're down bedding in that, and they're going to work up through your area, which is like the transition area, and then out into the ag field.
Yep. And the wind was out of the northwest. What's that?
I said working like the deer coming from east to west.
Yes. Yep.
Gotcha.
I felt like it was going to be a great opportunity that night. And the wind was out of the northeast, so it would have been blowing from the bedding to me, like into the open field. So I felt like I was bulletproof getting into this just to check the camera.
Yep, for sure. Okay, so you checked the camera. What's on it?
Well, I couldn't check it right there. I had to go home real quick and pop it into the computer. And so, mind you, this is a camera that's been marinating all September. So I got 30 days of pictures that I need to look at. There's a lot of pictures on there. There's a lot of young bucks, okay, and a lot of does. And so I keep flipping, and I get to September 27th, I believe it was. Daylight picture, there he is, the beehive buck, coming from the bedding right by the camera. And I get like 3 pictures of him, like 3 pictures of him right then in sequential order. I'm like, okay, so did he move, or is he just like coming through, like just a one-time deal? I get to the next day, he does the same thing in the evening.
Oh boy.
And I get to the next day, he does the same thing in the evening. So he did it 3 days in a row, all within like an hour time frame, like the same hour. And I'm like, okay, that's enough. That's all I need. Like, that's all I need. It's so close to season. This is the best place I need to sit. So I went back to Weather Underground. And I don't know if anybody knows about Weather Underground. It's a weather app service that you can like go back and look at historical data, like what the weather was doing, what the wind was doing.
Wind direction, yeah.
Yep. So I went back, and now mind you, this is October 1st, midday, and I'm doing all this, and I'm going back like the previous 5 days to see if there was any pattern on what he was doing and why he was coming through. I had nothing. Like, I couldn't figure out, like, he'd come in on like an east wind, then he'd come in on like a south wind, and then he'd come in on like a west wind. It just didn't
What the
make
heck?
sense. And he didn't have any sort of pattern to him other than I just felt like he was really comfortable in the situation he was in, and he's been there before, and he's just doing that. So I'm like, no brainer. I got to sit there tonight.
Right, for sure. So now, that night, you got the right wind for that spot, and is it still raining, or is it done raining now, or what's it doing?
Yeah, so it stopped mid-morning, and then I checked that camera, and it started raining again midday. Okay, so I'm like, well, I want to get in. I got to get in. It's overcast, no sun, no nothing. It's overcast. And then the other kicker is I'm a huge Michigan football fan, so Michigan Wolverines are playing in Madison, Wisconsin, so they're playing against the Badgers. So I'm like, I got that in my head. I want to watch the game, like, but I got a buck here that I need. And that'll play into here in a little bit, like that little tidbit. So I'm like, I just got to get in. So I literally, close the computer. I load my stuff up. I get back to the farm, and I parked up on the edge of the road. I didn't even go all the way back to the cabin or nothing. Parked there, got my stuff. I snuck into the stand. I get in.
Okay,
And
so
early. It's early. And the rain was like just stopping. And it was supposed to be no rain the rest of the day.
So you're getting into the stand as the rain's stopping.
Yep.
Perfect. What's the weather? Is it hot or cold or?
So it's pretty warm. It was actually like 67 degrees. It wasn't like a cold rain, if that makes sense. Like, how you get some like really chilly cold rains. Well, it was kind of humid. The wind was out of the northeast at like 10 mile an hour, so there wasn't a ton of wind, but there was enough of wind. And yeah, the temperature had dropped like 5 degrees, nothing like, not like a cold front or nothing like that. It was just a normal,
just coming down
drop.
a little bit.
Yep.
10 mile an hour wind solid too, though. I mean, more and more you deer hunt, more you like the wind. The deer move better with better wind. You can move in the stand better with better wind. But
right,
like when there's no wind, you see deer come out, man, they just look like they're so on edge. They're so spooky
for sure.
Because now they don't have the wind blowing at them. They can't smell very good, so they're constantly like, if you look at a deer in the wind and a deer not in the wind, you know what I mean? They act totally different.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
Having good wind is super important. So you got a north wind. He snuck into the stand. The rain's stopping. Now what?
Yep, northeast wind at 10 mile an hour. So it was hitting me in the right shoulder and going to like my left shoulder. Well, hit me in the right shoulder, and it was like kind of cutting me on an angle. So when I got in the stand, I was looking at this little pocket in the pine trees. It was like where like 10 pine trees didn't grow. Like when they did them in rows, it was like just this little pocket that they didn't grow. And it was probably 15 by 15, yards by 15.
Okay.
And I'm like, there was like 2 heavily used trails. Like you could tell the deer, that's the way they take. And I'm like, and I would do my puffer, and it would go right in that little pocket, and it would swirl. And I'm like, shit. So I'm like, I got to kill these deer before they get to this pocket if he comes through. And, because I know he wasn't going to get to my right. Like, there was a big hill there, and he couldn't, it was so thick. He was going to come to my left, and he was eventually going to be downwind, I felt. And so I get in the stand, and I start streaming the Michigan-Wisconsin football game on my phone.
Naturally.
Yes, I had to catch the game. It was a big game. And
that's hilarious.
So that's what I started doing. And I was in early. I mean, I can't remember, like, early season, it's getting dark, like late, like 7, 8 o'clock. I was in at like, I don't know, 3 o'clock. I felt it was like
nice and early.
2 or 3 o'clock. It was like really, I knew I had a long sit, so I knew it was going to be a long one, and I was going to watch a football game.
That's awesome, dude. So, tell me what happened from there. Where do you start seeing deer? What's the first deer that came out, or how'd it go from there?
Yeah, so I didn't see deer for a while. I was texting my neighbor back and forth. Him and I were texting. Now, just for perspective, he is sitting straight east of me, like 150 yards on his property, or 200 yards, somewhere as crow flies. And he's hunting this deer tonight as well. He's got pictures of them. I got pictures of them. So I'm like, one of us will see him. And this is the type of neighbor too. Like, we both get along really well. I'd love to see him kill a deer, a good deer. He'd love to see me kill a deer. Like, there's no like bad blood, no nothing. Like, I'm not big on that. Like,
That's good.
So
You just kind of moved in on his deer, though.
yeah, yeah. I'm doing it legally though. I'm on my own property, so
Yeah, that's funny. I'm just gonna sit 200 yards over here. Good luck, bud. Hey, give him a thumbs up from the tree.
Exactly. Him and I are texting back and forth, and how's the night going or whatever. And he's like, I haven't seen anything yet. He's even closer to the road than I am. He's like 50, 60 yards off the road. So like, but it's in a different direction. It's kind of weird how it works, but
yeah.
We're just sitting there kind of bullshitting back and forth, and I hear a twig snap behind me, like where that hill was, where I'm like, oh, there's no deer going to be coming through there. I look up, and on top of the hill, like it's above me. It's a pretty big hill. There's 3 does working up there, and I'm like, okay, well, there is like doe bedding up on this big hill, and I don't know how they got there, and they kind of went out of sight, and that was it. I mean, I had some turkeys working behind me, and I'm just sitting there watching the Michigan game, and the hours went by, and I'm like, didn't see anything, and all of a sudden it's getting to be that kind of prime time. It's getting a little chillier, it just feels better, and obviously Michigan and Wisconsin are taking it down to the wire in the game, and all of a sudden I get a text from my neighbor, and he goes, dude, he was just here within 15 yards, and I couldn't get a shot at him.
Oh,
and
no way.
I'm like, no way. I said immediately, I was like, what way did he go? Because I'm west of him. He goes, he's going straight east when he left. And I'm like, shit.
Wrong
that
way.
deer's he's not going to come now. Like, he's literally a straight line from me. So the deer,
It's going the wrong way.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I'm thinking, well, here he is. I know where the deer's at. You're always thinking of standing, man, I'd love to know where this buck's at or whatever. I know where he's at now, and he's not coming my way. So I'm like contemplating, like, what do? You got to stick in the tree, but
yeah,
like, he's not coming this way. Like, shit,
right.
It was an immediate buzzkill.
Oh.
And I went back to, I think I texted him back, and I said, what way did he go? And he said he went east. I'm like, shit. So we're kind of like texting back and forth. And then I flip the game back on my phone, and it's just sitting in my lap or whatnot. And literally I hear a twig snap from behind me, and I don't move. And I'm like, I know it was close, real close. And I kind of like turn my head to the left a little bit. And at 6 yards right underneath me, the buck is standing right underneath me.
Oh, no
And
way.
I'm like, I go, oh my God. Like, in my head, I'm like, he's looking underneath my tree, okay? Looking out towards the field.
Oh my
And I'm
gosh.
like, what the hell am I going to do here? He's directly underneath me, behind me. The good thing is I had the tree as a barrier. You know what I mean? So I could do a little bit of moving. So I put my phone in my hip pocket, or not my hip pocket, but I have like a jacket pocket. It's like kind of like a muff in a way.
Yep.
And put my phone. It was easy to put like right there. And I grabbed my bow, and you could just tell the deer was he didn't know I was there, but his sixth sense like kicked in and was like, something's wrong.
Yep.
Like, he didn't know I was above him, but he could feel something. You could just tell. And what he did is he turned, and as he turned and started walking south, so he'd be walking away from me, I clipped my release on, and then he started turning right to come right into that little pocket at 18 yards downwind of me. So my first shooting lane is gone, where I figured I'd have to shoot him. I'm like, he's going to bust me right when he gets into this pocket. So I left a barrier of trees where if deer were coming through when I was cutting lanes, I wanted to be able to have an opportunity to draw. Right. And when he got underneath those trees, I couldn't see his body at all. I just drew. And then he took 3 more steps out, and he stopped by himself perfectly, quartering away a little bit, broadside. But he had his nose in the air. He could kind of start smelling. I already had the pin on him, and I slipped one right in. I mean, passed through right there. He goes into the field. And I'm like,
Dude.
This is what the hell just happened? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I didn't have a lighted knock on. Usually I always shoot lighted knocks. I have shot lighted knocks for 10 years, 12 years. This year I didn't have lighted knocks on. Probably me being cheap and don't want to spend $34 on light and Knox, and I didn't buy light and Knox. So I'm like, I know the shot felt really good, but I'm like, where'd I hit him kind of thing. Well, everything's wet from it raining all day. So I'm sitting there texting my buddies, texting my wife, like I just shot him. Everybody's asking how's the hit, and I'm like, I don't know. I text my neighbor and I'm like, I just slipped an arrow through him, and he goes, no way. He's like, on through text, he's like, no way. I look back at from when he told me the text that he sent me from when he's going east and from when I put an arrow in him, it was 13 minutes. Because I texted him like right after I shot him, like I just stuck him, and it was 13 minutes in between texts. So that deer made a loop somehow, got around him, and then was under me in 13 minutes.
You think your neighbor was fibbing to you?
I don't know. I think he was.
He's like, shit, it's going right towards Aaron. Nope, going the wrong way, bro. Might as well climb down.
I guess I never thought about that, but maybe. I don't know. He never said anything.
Because then he snuck up on you. If you'd have been ready, I wonder how you would have reacted differently. If you'd have been like, dude, he's coming your way. Would you have been on pins and needles with your, bow in your hand?
I would have been boring holes in that direction, but I wasn't. And where that deer stepped out, I would have been able to watch him come for like probably 60 or 80 yards, before I could shoot him.
I wonder how that would have played out differently, because if you'd have had your bow in your hand and he'd have came from that way, would you have been trying to shoot him earlier? Or I wonder how that scenario would have played out a little different.
I probably would have tried to force it and try to shot him earlier before he got to my wind. You know what I mean?
So him being able to sneak in and kind of then, like you said, his sixth sense kicked in and kind of burgered him off a little bit, just enough for you to shoot him. Like, I don't think I wonder if it would have happened a little differently, how it would have went down.
I don't know. I probably would have forced it, and I probably would have got like that emotionally attached, and I probably would have, my heart would have been coming out of my chest. But this was like, I've talked about it before. I've used a baseball reference of playing third base, like, and then playing shortstop. You get more time to think about it when you're playing shortstop, a ground ball coming at you, and you might screw it up. Right. But third base, you're kind of playing in tighter. They call it the hot corner for a reason. It's more reaction. This was more of like a reaction. From when I saw him to when I put an arrow through him, it was probably 15 seconds at the most, maybe.
Oh, wow, quick.
Yeah, it was quick. Yep. So it felt like it was an eternity, but it was quick.
So when he was close and he was coming in on your right-hand side?
He would have been on my left side. So he would have literally brushed my tree if he would have kept walking.
So
he was coming
close
tighter
was
to
he?
the tree. He was at 6 yards when I looked down when I looked down and behind me, I could see like the top of his head.
Oh boy.
Yeah, he was tight.
So when you got your phone in your hand, he's at 6 yards. Like, I've been in that situation before where you're kind of like, shit, how did I get myself in this situation? Like, you're trying to, tuck your phone in your pocket, and you're trying to do it. I mean, he's at 6 yards. So, I mean, even just like your camo on camo, like hitting your leg is enough for him to go, whoa, what was that?
Yep.
You heard him break a stick. So that's how quiet it must have been. So if you made one little zipper noise, one little, even getting your bow off the bow hanger, one little tink, that might have, triggered him to look. So you got to be stealth in that situation. Yeah,
and honestly, call it for what it is, or what you can call me, say it's bullshit or whatnot. But usually when I'm like, I do look at my phone. I wouldn't say quite a bit, but I'm on my phone a little bit when I'm in the stand. It kind of gets boring here and there, checking social media, doing this. At this, I was watching a football game. But what I do is, like, I actually have the phone in my lap, like sitting on my leg with a hand on it. So like, and it's kind of not half, but like a quarter in my pocket, to where it's just like a slip. Like, I just got to slip it in my pocket. In this instant, it worked out. You know what I mean? If I would have been holding it in front of my face and I had to move, I'd have been screwed. But, and when I was younger, my dad taught me to leave my bow on my knees, like on my lap. I don't do that. I hang my bow up all the time. Like, I always hang my bow up, but I always put it to where it's literally right by my left shoulder, or my hand, or my grip is literally like right by my left shoulder or bicep. So it's not that much. It is movement. I mean, I'm not trying to say it's better than one. I hate holding on to my bow all night. I haven't been into a lot of situations where I wasn't able to get to my bow. Actually, none. I don't remember any situations I've never been able to get to my bow to get a shot off. Yeah. So until that starts happening a lot, I'm really not going to do anything different. So it's kind of funny, little side note here, but like when you first start deer hunting,
you put an arrow in your bow at the house. I don't know if you ever did that when I was a
Yep.
kid, like 10,
Oh
12
yeah.
years old. I used to like hunt to my tree stand. It's kind of funny. And then, as you progress, you sit with the bow on your lap. And then as hunting's progressed from there, okay, now it's on a bow hanger. And then you watch guys like on TV, Mark Drury, who's sitting in a muddy blind. He don't even have an arrow out of his quiver. And it's like that's next level. That's like expert. He's like, no, I'm not even putting one in my bow until I'm
Yeah.
ready. So it's kind of funny how it's like, it's almost like you would think it'd be the opposite. You'd think if you were an expert, you'd put it, an arrow in at the house and walk out hunting, but it's actually the complete opposite.
Yep. And a lot of that I think is just not knowing and not being comfortable with this, and high anticipation as well. I mean, when you're 12 years old and still wet behind the ears, it's like, man,
Right.
deer, are they going to start running out at me here? Are we
Right.
going to be
You
able to
have no
kill them as
idea.
I'm walking here, or what is it? And now it's to the point where it's like, I think I think last year was my 21st year of hunting, like
Right.
legitimately like bow hunting. I think it was, or 20th year. I can't remember, but I've been to a lot of places. I've hunted a lot of time in the tree, and it's like you find different ways to be able to be successful and also be like efficient. Like if I was getting busted a lot going for my bow when a deer was coming in, then I wouldn't be hanging it up. But I have yet to
Right.
do that. So my dad, he still to this day will not shoot a deer standing up. He's got to be sitting down. So
Really?
the bow is always, oh yeah, yeah. So when we set up stands for him, he's got to be able to shoot sitting down.
Really? Well, it's one less thing you got to do. In my early stages of bow hunting, I remember trying to stand up to shoot one of my first deer, and I got the bow in my hand and I go halfway up, and the deer
Sure.
spooks, looks at you. So if you don't got to stand up, I mean, you can be that much stealthier. I'm more comfortable standing for some reason. I think if I see a deer a long way off, which I'm tall too, and the stands are only 18 inches tall, so that always drives me crazy. But if I see deer a long way off, I just want to stand up immediately. Like get up,
Yep.
get comfortable, get the camera, get the bow, get everything like situated, so that way you can move. If I have to turn all the way around, for me it's just easier to stand up. But sometimes like that situation that you had killing that deer, I'm assuming you were sitting down watching your phone and he come right in, twig snapped, and it's like, oh man, because then you're limited to only being able to shoot one direction when you're sitting.
Yeah, and that one I was sitting down, but I will tell you majority of the time, whether I'm filming for sure, but if hunting, I'm standing up most of the time. Filming 100%, I'll sit down just to take a quick break, but I'm standing up. If it's November, the rut, I am standing up with the camera right at my chest, because you never know when a doe might bust through and a buck's behind him, and you got to get right on him.
That's it. You said this kill was that buck was there 15 seconds. So really is like as soon as that twig snapped, there's a timer going 15 seconds before you got an arrow out of your bow.
Yep.
So it's like you got to be ready. You got to hunt like you're ready. You just never know. Even though it's not the rut, October, that was still like a casual encounter, but it was only 15 seconds.
For sure. And I talked about that barrier of trees that I left there. I could have cut a lot of those limbs off, but I'm like, honestly, when I was trimming it out in the summer, I was like, this will be a good opportunity to be able to see deer come through. And then I've got like a 15-yard buffer that I know they're going to come through this little gap where I killed them, where I can stand up if I have to, or I can grab my bow, or I can pull it back, and it worked to perfection. So I think about that stuff too when I'm setting up a stand or even prepping a tree that I might do a hang and bang in. Like if you can figure out, especially early season like this, where bed to food is, or where you think deer are really going to be filtering through and spending a lot of time, you can manipulate those spots to where like I've laid trees down where it made the deer have to circle out 20 yards in front of me and give me a shot. I've done that before. So those little things like that can go a long way. And in this instance, it really helped. So
yeah, that's awesome. It's always good to leave some cover like the way that you did too, because when that buck's in there at 6 yards and you got to make a move, you have to get your bow and you have to draw, and you can see that he's about to move behind. I mean, it don't matter if it's one tree or a bush or whatever it is. Like, okay, he's behind that cover that I could have trimmed and I had better shots, but I left it there so I can get away with that movement of getting your bow back. So that's useful too. I used to over trim all my spots. I used to get in there and
I still do.
I do, because I'm like, what if he comes this way? What if he comes this way?
Yep.
And Lauren and I just killed Missouri a week and a half ago, and that tree was hardly trimmed out, and I'm so glad, because all the deer that were there, they couldn't see us. Just
Yep,
it's that fine line between you want it trimmed out and you want good cover.
for sure. Yeah, no, I agree. So I slipped an arrow through this deer, and motions are high, and I get down. I probably waited 20 minutes or so. I got down, and it was starting to get dark, and I was like, I didn't have a flashlight with me. I had my phone, but I'm like, I want to see what this arrow looks like, because he just ran out. He ran out in the field, and then I never heard anything. Usually they're running in the woods, and you can hear him fall or whatever, but he is
Right.
going straight west, and I'm like, I can't hear nothing. And I get down, and going back to everything's wet, there was hardly any blood on my arrow.
Oh,
And I'm like, oh God, did I miss him? I'm like, there's no way I missed him. I felt like I saw the arrow hit him, and he mule kicked. I know he mule kicked, and I'm like, then you start second guessing
oh
shit.
yeah.
And I'm like,
you're playing it back in
oh
your
no.
head.
Yeah,
You're like,
I'm like,
oh,
no, don't do this, don't do this. So I pick the arrow up, and I stick it in the ground right there, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna be back, because I'm gonna try to go get some help. And I had some guys that were hunting the property were hunting in the back, and he was running. Where you and I were trying to get those birds in the field. You were filming me in the high alfalfa field this year.
Yep.
Okay, so my buck was running right at him, and we have the two-track trail right there.
Yep.
So to get back to our cabin, you got to go down this trail. Well, I'm like, he's probably going to be out in the field that or whatnot. I get back to my truck, and then a buddy of mine, Patrick, that hunts with us over there, he calls me. He's like, hey, there's a dead buck right here about 30 yards off the trail. Just want to know if it was yours or not. And I'm like, yep, that would be him. And he ran probably like 100 yards at the most, or whatever, and piled up right on the edge of the trail there. And I'm like, yes.
Dude,
So,
that is awesome, dude. October 1st, like, that is what everybody dreams of doing, is doing
Yeah.
what you did. So that's freaking cool.
yep. And that's it. Honestly, before that, I have not had great luck in October hunting, but since then I've had some pretty good luck. Like October 10th, the Jim Abbott story, I had an opportunity. Him didn't hit him very good, but I had my opportunity. October 10th, 32 yards. And then that one, October 18th, I killed a good buck on that same farm with my bow. October 20th, this last year, I missed one on October 29th. And then October 20th, I had a really close encounter with a good deer. So my October hunting, I feel like, is on the upscale. Like I'm getting a little better at it, I feel like. But no, I'm no expert at any sort of hunting. I just try to do what I feel like is right and see what happens, kind of thing. So
For sure. And I think a lot of it is, this doesn't get talked about much, but you have to have a property that hunts well in October in a way.
Yep,
Like
you
you
do.
said, you have that Christmas tree farm, or you might have, that wheat field or whatever it is. You have to have an area that's going to hold deer for small amounts of movement, because they're not moving a mile like they do in November. They're only moving a few hundred yards. So I haven't had the best luck in October. I killed my first buck I ever killed in October. I've killed a lot of does in October, but it's normally for me that first week in November. And I think that's more the main reason to that is because the farms that I hunt are more of like pass through farms. Mm-hmm. They don't necessarily like live there. There's not these, ideal thickets. There's not, a bunch of pines. There's not something that's really going to like, I don't know, like hold a deer that great in October.
right.
So you have to be in a good spot that's going to hold deer in October. So that's really important.
I agree, man. Being able to have the situation where the farm lays out that way is nice. And in my family farm where I killed this deer it's kind of difficult. It's big woods. It's hard in general to get a pattern on a deer, and especially in Michigan, like a high pressured state. Like it's so hard to get a pattern on a deer. And honestly, if I didn't get this intel from my neighbor, I don't know if I would have went and checked that camera or not, because I was so set on that stand down on the other end of the farm where I hunted that morning. I really felt like I was going to kill that deer down there. And if he wouldn't have told me that, I probably wouldn't have went up and checked that camera. You know
That's
what I mean?
crazy.
So that helped out a lot. So he probably killed that deer for me. But the camera data, if I would have, how much of a pattern that deer was on, you know, that was my best odds. Those were my best opportunity. And he was not, he was there for 3 days in a row. I think it was 3 days in a row. And then he wasn't there for like 2 days. And then on October 1st night, he came through again and I stuck him. So then that kind of opened up the question. Like that was like the first significant buck that I killed with the wind coming to his back while he was like coming to me. And I thought to myself, and this was a question I asked a lot of people that were a lot better hunters than me, and to ask them if they've had this instance, and they have. And basically the general consensus of what people were saying was like that deer felt really comfortable in that situation. He's been there, he's done that. He kind of threw caution to the wind going into the destination food, and he wasn't boogered yet, and you caught him early enough, kind of thing. That's what a lot of people were saying.
For sure. This is not to quote like a book reference, but I like to read a lot. And this book that I read is called Deep Survival from Lawrence Gonzalez. And he talks about how the more likely you do something, or if you do something and get away with it, like for example, if I went skydiving on the weekend and I went skydiving 3 times, every time I go skydiving, I assume that skydiving's safe because I've already done it. So right. It's kind of, that equates the same way for deer. If that buck is like, hey, I kind of got the wrong wind, but I already daylighted out there twice. Every time he does it, he might not care about the wind as much because, he's did it and he got away with it. So every time he does it again, he's probably less cautious about the wind and the dangers of it.
For sure. And, he could have been right on the verge of doing another transition too, like switching his pattern again. And fun fact, that tit 9-pointer, one of our guys shot him opening day of rifle season, but I was actually back for like 2 days in November, like November 2nd and 3rd, I think. I was back from a filming, and I hunted those 2 days. Well, I went back down where I was getting that tit 9 and then my buck frequently on camera down in that swamp and that pinch. My dad and I went in there, and I figured that tit 9 was still down there. Like, that was his home, because the 8 kind of transitioned up to me, and we were getting him on camera. The 9, we were getting him on camera down by in that swamp. So I'm like, we had 2 stands set down there. I said, let's go down there. Either one of us is going to kill him or we're going to see him. And we both went down there, and he ended up coming out on me at 60 yards, embedded with a doe for 3.5 hours at 60 yards, and I couldn't get an arrow in him. And then when they got up, they walked away. And I almost like got an opportunity at him too, and I'm like, dang it. And then one of our guys shot him opening day of gun season. So that was cool though too. Like,
yeah,
our camp got both deer, so that was really neat.
That's super cool, dude. So that spot that you killed out of, is that like, do you think that spot is just a really good spot where you have that stand and that's going to be good every single year, every October 1st? Or do you think this was just like a situational thing for that one deer that happened to be doing that?
Very situational thing. A couple years, after that, like the next year, I went in and tried to find a place to put a stand on the south side of that opening so I could hunt it more on like west winds and north winds and stuff like that. I put a stand in there, hunted a couple times. The deer movement just went down to like, I don't know if I screwed it up or what had happened, but the deer just didn't use it anymore like they did. And I kind of like axed that spot off and haven't really went back there since. So, but yeah, that was a situational thing. I think the rain had something to do with it. I think it was the only deer I've ever killed on a full moon. It was a full moon at that time. Yeah, I don't know. I just think it was the overcast, the rain, and just catching a deer before he really got into his fall pattern and his fall spot, and just caught him at the right time. Probably more lucky than good, to be honest with you. Actually, I know it is. I just got real lucky that night.
There's nothing wrong with that. So honestly, one of the biggest factors there was, it sounds like talking to your neighbor. More than anything. Obviously, the trail cam data was super important too, but like you said, without talking to him, you probably wouldn't even have went in and checked that camera. So
right.
I don't even talk to my neighbors that much. Maybe I should talk to them a little bit more, because that played a huge role. That piece of data was more important than a cold front. It was more important than, a red moon or whatever it was, because when you got that information, you went in, checked that camera, he was there, and then boom, you were able to kill him. So
For sure.
that's super important, man.
Yep.
So got any bucks tied up right now for October 1?
Nothing.
Nothing.
I know
What the
they're
heck?
around. I
Have
just
you
don't
went and
have a
knocked
beat
on
on a buck.
doors? Talked to all your neighbors?
No, I haven't
No?
talked to any neighbors. That farm that I killed on, my family farm, I have one camera out there. I don't have any stand set, or I shouldn't say that. I have one stand set, but I have a lot of trees prepped. I'm doing all mobile hunting up there. I'm running and gunning, just kind of. I want to go in blind. I just want to like kind of hunt off the land this year and kind of get back to what you know, what I was taught to do and use the land a little bit more and get in some areas that I've never really got into and just try to do that and figure out the deer and figure out where they're at. I've put a lot of merit into trail cams on that farm, and now it's just like I've stayed the hell out of that whole farm this whole summer, and I'm ready to get in like October 1st and let's find something. Let's find something and go in blind and kill something. That's my goal. My 1 acre farm, there's throughout the summer there was 5 bucks that frequent a lot that are good bucks. I mean, nothing real huge, but good enough for me. I'm not gonna lie to you. In the last month and a half, my cameras have went dry. Have not seen deer over there at all. I've seen does, but no bucks. We have so much corn up around us this year, and it's not off yet. So I feel like when that corn starts getting shelled and cut and everything, like I think the deer will start moving around. They'll be there. But normally I usually have bucks pretty frequent at this time in the 1 acre on cell cam, and there's nothing yet. So I'm a little worried, but I'm not so worried because it'll happen. They'll come in here, and like I said, I've said it before, mid-October is the time I need to be on that farm.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's kind of like my farm in a way. I just have that 20-acre piece, and like I said, I just got that picture that one of the shooter bucks. I had him in velvet, and he came through the other night about midnight, 11 o'clock at night. And my farm's like a pass-through farm, so it's like he doesn't really live there. He's probably just transitioning from A to B, and he happened to go through there. So my only hopes of getting lucky in October, which I haven't had the greatest success, is striking on a cold front, waiting for that that cold day, and then get into where I've seen him on camera. Even if I seen him at midnight, that's okay. I want to be in the area that he's using, and I want to do it on a cold front. Because if it's not a cold front, I don't feel optimistic enough that he's going to be in there. You know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah, and honestly, cold fronts in October are like starting to be my new like favorite thing to do. Like, if I get a 10-degree drop, I mean, it could be October 6th, and I'm like, yep, going in. Or October 16th, I'm going in.
Yep.
It's cool to. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like back 10 years ago, I didn't do that a lot. I was still pretty green, like thinking I knew a lot, but I didn't. I don't think I know a lot now, but I'm learning. But there's just these little nuances that I'm trying to strike on, and I'm getting more successful. I mean, since 2015, I've been year after year. I've had really good luck and have been pretty successful. And before that, the 10 years coming up to that, it was like, I might go 2 years without a buck, or I might kill 2 bucks in a row, like season after season. Then I might go 3 years dry. Well, now it's more of a consistent thing. It's usually just about every year so far, and it's like, okay, I gotta, I'm doing something right. What am I doing here? And kind of keep building on that.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
So, well, cool, man. Let's. Do you got any more questions? Because I'm gonna cut this loose if you don't.
The only thing I was gonna ask you is, like, obviously you've killed a bunch of deer in early October. I mean, maybe not necessarily early, but like October, you've killed a good amount of October deer. So somebody that's wanting to go hunt either the first week of October or the first cold front in October, like, what piece of advice would you give them? And maybe kind of like, where would they go set up? Would you recommend like in the woods or a food plot, or what's like your ideal go-to for early October?
Trying to get a bead on a deer, honestly.
Yeah.
Not going in blind like I used to. If I like right now, I'm going in blind. I can tell you the scenario right now. October 1st is Friday. I think I'm probably going to be leaving for Illinois this weekend. I'm not sure. But if I'm here in Michigan, I don't have a bead on a deer right now. I prepped a tree on my family farm that I have stayed out of since May, and I want to jump in there. And it's thick. It's a thick spot. I feel like I'm within 150 yards from the bedding, but I'm sitting over the only acorn tree in the whole, like, in the matter of like probably 60 or 70 acres.
Oh, wow.
Like, it's a big oak tree in the middle. It almost looks like a turd in a punch bowl. Like, it's like it shouldn't be there. You know
like
what I mean?
Like a deer feeder sitting out there.
Exactly. And the acorns are dropping like crazy right now. So that is like probably going to be like a go-to for sure, going in blind. But normally I want to try to get a bead on a deer. Like my 1 acre farm, I can see a long way. It's a lot of ag. I've been spending a lot of mornings right now in the last couple days. And I'm at my house, building my house on the 1 acre farm. So I'm there every night. So I'm glancing out and it's all beans right now, just seeing how the deer are moving. But if I get a bead on a buck within the next couple days here, I might push in on them there. I know that really doesn't answer your question, but there's a lot of field edge hunting on the 1 acre, or I've got 2 stands where I can dive in like in the thick stuff. So just depends. I mean,
yeah,
just trying to find something in a scenario like a farm country. I'm trying to find something to go after, but big woods, I got a spot that I've stayed the heck out of all summer, and acorns are good right now. I think I'm going to push in there probably.
Okay. So I stuck a cell camera out behind my house back in the big timber back there, and I've never really run cameras back there because the canopy is so thick. It's like so dark. I mean, it looks like it's, 6, 7 o'clock at night in the middle of the day because there's no undergrowth. It's just like, dead looking. And I stuck a cell camera back there just because I've never had one. And I'm getting like crazy consistent photos because it's a cell cam, like in the middle of the day, like 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock. I mean, it's even 6 o'clock, and these deer are just moving right by this camera all hours of the day. And I can't help but think that those deer are bedded, right by there. You know what I mean? Because I don't think they're transitioning anywhere. I don't really think they're feeding. I think they're bedded within 100 yards of that camera. So my game plan for October is kind of just, I don't even think I really need a cold front, especially if I want to shoot a doe or something. But I could actually go in and do exactly what you did. I already have a tree pre-trimmed out. And I'll probably go in there like at noon because I have pictures as early as like 2 o'clock. So I'll go in there at like noon, 1 o'clock and hang a stand, get up in the tree. And I'm assuming that I'm going to be hanging really close to where those deer are bedded.
For sure.
And but it's kind of cool just because that cell cam data, gave me that. Because if not, I wouldn't even have checked it. I probably wouldn't go back in to check that camera until mid-October, and I would have never hunted it. So that cell camera data, being sent right to my phone, it's like, oh, wow, there's deer moving in there, so I'm going to hunt that area. It's kind of cool.
Good deal, man. I hope you kill one early.
Yeah, I hope so, too. I don't think it's not looking that great for bucks yet, but that's one thing fun about early October is get out there and shoot some does and try to figure some deer out.
Yep. Good deal, man. I'm going to cut this loose. I appreciate you coming on and kind of being the host this week. Good idea on your part to, tag along, and I appreciate that. You asked some questions that were like, it wasn't me just sitting here blabbering. I did talk a lot, but, you broke up the monotony.
For sure, man. I was trying my best here to hit you with some questions, but
You're good. You're good, man. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
For sure, man. I had fun. That was a cool story.
All right, there you have it. Thank you very much, Tyler, for coming on, buddy. Greatly appreciated. That was a cool idea. I thought maybe you guys thought it was really stupid, but that was a story I haven't told in a while. And he was like, hey, I'd love to come on and help and give some questions. So that was really cool. A different dynamic, and hopefully you guys took a little bit from it. So good luck to everybody out there this fall. If you guys have a story and you want to talk about and come on the podcast, shoot me, a DM on Instagram or shoot me an email or something and say, hey, let's hook up and tell about some cool, successful stories. So I'd love to hear it. Or if you guys have a good story about, early October hunting that, for some reason or another you got it done, let me know. So that'd be greatly appreciated. So with that being said, thank you guys very much for all the support and all the downloads. Please go to iTunes, leave a 5-star rating, and leave a written review. And don't forget, we'll be right here next week on the Fall Podcast.